Welcome to Devalued with Mike and Caroline, the place where we talk about art and money and how creative people are navigating the ever-changing landscape of trying to make a living for their work.
We're going to be interviewing all types of creative people, and we'll be talking about all types of issues that creative people face. We hope you'll get something out of it. We're excited to welcome you to Devalued.
Hi, Caroline.
Hey, Mike. Who are we talking with today?
We are talking to Pooneh Ghana. She's probably one of the top music photographers working today. I think everyone who's listening to this has probably seen a Pooneh Ghana photo.
Absolutely.
She's worked at every magazine from Pitchfork to DIY. She's covered every band from Olivia Rodrigo to Angel Olsen to Bagger Boys and beyond. This conversation was really cool.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's kind of like an it girl, you know? She's just amongst all the cool things. And it seems like she's been very true to what she thinks is cool, and it has made a whole career by making things that she likes.
So anyone who's interested in, freelance photography or building a freelance career in the arts, I think this is the conversation for you.
Yeah.
And if you want to follow Pooneh Ghana,
yeah, you can find her on Instagram at POONEHGHANA for her fantastic work.
So let's hear it.
So, what are your thoughts on the relationship between art and money?
The relationship between art and money. I mean, I think now is like, I guess I don't even want to say it's like now, because I guess, the way art's value has been perceived is a lot of people are told how much something is worth or whatever. So it's kind of hard. I feel like that's something that's very subjective. But, I personally, I feel like every artist, at least the artists that I know personally, like they work so hard and they deserve to get paid, and a lot of times respected a lot more than what they actually are. And it's like such a weird thing to navigate, because a lot of people also, just like I was saying earlier, don't know what goes behind it. They think it's just someone taking a photo. It's like, you're just like shooting, like you take one photo and that's it. That's your job. But they don't realize how much goes behind it and how much value even now, like I guess in the internet age, how much of like one photo can like impact someone. And, we still see it now. It's just like, one photo can completely shape the way you look at a person. So there's so much value in that. And yeah, and I kind of, I guess I wish I could see how art would look if people were getting paid what they should be getting paid, when people have the resources to be able to like fully be creative and fully just be able to focus on doing something they're good at to the best of their abilities without having to, struggle with just being respected in the art field. Like, I can't imagine what kind of art would be coming out of that alone. Just, when people are able to fully focus on it and not just be trying to survive. But yeah, it's, it's always been a tricky thing to navigate. Even when I first started, and especially now, it's just like, just seeing how people that are just coming into like the photography world or the art world in general, just how to even begin doing it, and making a name for yourself.
Yeah, that's such a great answer. And I think that's a great place to kind of kick off the conversation too, because we spend so much time talking on this show to musicians about the struggles of trying to make it in today's culture and, with all the challenges of touring and streaming. And I was wondering if you're experiencing any of the same challenges in terms of photography. What are the challenges today that you're encountering?
I guess just as far as how
making it and like, trying to keep it afloat and trying to keep it going. Like, are you experiencing any challenges or is everything like really hunky dory?
Yeah, I think with being freelance, you constantly feel, even when I was first starting out, you're just constantly on your toes with what's going to happen next. And you're always constantly having to adapt. So I think having that mindset in this world has been like really helpful. Like, especially with COVID, just being like, I think going in to the pandemic with that just kind of helped me be like, okay, how can I be creative and useful with what I know during this time? Like, can I raise money? Can I go cover something that's important? Can I, just, yeah. And, I think the way I approach it is I feel like I see a lot of older photographers and artists just be very bitter about the way things are changing, just bitter about Instagram or, just how people are getting jobs now. And, I think ultimately that's just going to kind of ruin everything for you. And it's going to make you resentful about something that you ultimately should love doing. And that's, I love what I do. And so, if Instagram, that is something that comes along with that, it's like, okay, how can I make this fun for myself and still just be myself and be authentic with it? So I think, it's like, I ultimately have the internet to thank for even having a career. And, and there's not really any rhyme or reason to how to get started, like how you get started. I basically just started a Flickr and just got my first job through there. And so, from there, you just kind of like, okay, there's like Tumblr, maybe I'll just start sharing my work on there. And I think it's just, a lot of it is just kind of going with the flow, but ultimately just being myself, because that's just like what people resonate with the most. When you see, someone share something and then after that there's like 20 other people doing the same thing, like that's not going to really make you stick out as an artist. It's just like following a trend. So yeah, I try to just like, it's just like a beast you kind of have to deal with now, being a photographer or being an artist, just like trying to navigate that world of your work being seen. But like, yeah, ultimately, I think just being myself has like kept me grounded and kept me like happy with what I'm doing and putting out there. And yeah, I hope people like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would be curious to learn how you got into photography and how you kind of launched your career. And if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about how you got into it. Did you go to school for it, or was it something learned? Or like, tell us a little bit about like how you got started and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess I grew up in San Antonio and just kind of started going to shows for fun in Austin because there wasn't really much going on in San Antonio. And I was so detached from high school already. I just wanted to get out of there. And at the time I was just like, when I was like 14, 15, just taking a little like compact digital camera. And then I remember the White Stripes, they put out this like peppermint Holga. I don't know if y'all know Lomography, it's like the camera company. They make a lot of really cool, just like weird, cheap cameras that are really fun to play with. And I remember getting an email about that. She's like, oh, I got to get this because I was a big White Stripes fan. And of course, it immediately sold out. But I was just like, oh, like I haven't heard of Lomography before. Like the Holga is only like $30, so I'll just buy one. And then from there, I think that kind of sparked my interest into, just kind of playing around, like buying cheap film cameras. And from there, just, everything is so accessible on the internet. So I just, learned what ISO meant and I learned how to process film. So everything was self-taught. And so I went to college, but it wasn't studying photography, but I was doing my photography career. Like I was building it while I was in school because I knew that's what I wanted to do. So by the time I graduated college, I was able to start doing this full time.
Wow.
But yeah, I guess like how I first got my first job as a photographer was like as I said earlier, I was just sharing stuff on Flickr, and I was just like shooting band Polaroids for fun after shows. Like I would wait to meet the bands. And that blog Gorilla versus Bear found my work.
Yeah.
And, especially at that time, they were just so huge and so influential. And through there, like I had them to thank a lot for just I don't know, taking a chance on me. And they're just like, well, PayPal you some money to, like buy film and just cover some shows for us in Austin. And then from there, there's like Austinist, that's like another like music, I guess, culture site in Austin. And I started shooting from them, and then Stereo Gum. And then, yeah, it just kind of grew from there.
Wow, that's awesome.
And you have a background in marketing, right? Is that what
I went to school for marketing. Initially my dad wanted me to be a pharmacist, because he's a chemist, and I did that for like half a semester, and I'm just like, this is not. Wow. And I think at the time I kind of already knew, like, I want to do this. I want to do this photography thing. I want to make it work. And I was just like stubbornly just set on it. I'd like to think for better. And so, I got my marketing degree. And, I mean, who knows how useful it is? Maybe in some ways.
Just, like,
being self-employed.
Yeah. Sometimes that can feed into your career in ways that you really did not expect. Like, I'm sure the marketing education has played in some kind of way, maybe just to understanding that dedication to posting on Instagram or whatever platform,
or writing a good email.
Well, I mean, I think if anything, maybe in some ways subconsciously it just kind of helped me kind of know how to plan out my career as a photographer. But like ultimately, I think maybe not the like specific marketing degree so much, but I think just the discipline of going to school and like getting my degree. It's like I mainly did it for my parents to make them happy. But being able to do that, and then at the same time, I was cramming like 15 hours into 2 days, and the rest of the time I was just focusing on doing my photography. So I think just that discipline with balancing both and being able to get it both done, I think, that taught me something for sure. And just, getting to move to Austin and being there during that time and just meeting a lot of people at school and, just kind of building my own little life out there. And like the Austin community is so supportive. I don't think I would be where I am today if it wasn't for them. Just like, there's like a music committee at UT that I was a part of, where we would like help put on shows, and I would like sometimes like sneak some photos during the shows there. And all the venues there, they just, saw I was trying to do this photography thing. So like, the owners or whatever, just be like, yeah, come shoot, like, maybe just share a few photos with us, but yeah, like come do your thing. So yeah, I think my time there during school and yeah, like I think it did a lot for me, just, not just for my career, but just for myself and like my own, just being like, I have the discipline to be able to do something if I put my mind to it.
Yeah. Well, I found out about you years ago from taking photos of bands that I already liked, and then following you and saw that we had very similar tastes musically. And so it's been great to kind of watch you grow as a photographer, and you've turned me on to new bands. And I wondered if the curation part of what you do is intentional.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's definitely jobs you do sometimes where you're just like, okay, well, this isn't my favorite band, or this is just, some stuff that's like, someone asked me to shoot like a holiday party. It's like, okay, I'll do that stuff. But like, I think, like I was saying earlier, like everything I share and put out there, and, the artists I'm covering and like talking about are people I'm really excited about. And I think it's intentional. Like I'd like to think I'm not completely jaded by all of this yet, and whenever a new artist comes out or just like hear a new album, I'm just like, I have to cover this band. Like, how do I make this happen? And yeah, like that, I hope that excitement shows in like the photos I share.
Yeah, it certainly does. I mean, because there's a lot of photos that you've taken that are just simply amazing, like the Death Grips one where it's silhouetted.
Thank you.
And there's a one you did of Angel Olsen on a canoe, I think. That is so gorgeous. So I was wondering, like, getting back to your career, like, when did you realize that you were doing this? Like, when did you realize that it was like gonna be your full-time thing?
It's kind of hard to know when that turning point was specifically. I think there was a long period of time where it was just like, I'm going to try to do this, but I don't really know if this is going to be like something I can actually make a living doing, So there was definitely a period of time where it was just like, okay, well, I have to think of like a backup. Like, should I actually try to get a marketing job, or should I just try to be like a bartender in Austin and try to do photography? And I think like I was saying earlier, by the time I graduated college, I realized like, oh, I'm making enough money to like pay rent. And I think that was the point where I was like, okay, I can really actually do this. And I think one of the biggest turning points was maybe like a couple of years after that, when my dad, who, very Persian dad, just very worried all the time, and just like, okay, but like, what's going to be your backup? And I remember like having a conversation with him, and him just being like, so yeah, what do you think? Do you think you're going to try to like open up a studio in Austin? And I'm just like, okay, he supports this now. So
That's
I think that
awesome.
was a big turning point for me too. And now they're, very proud, and that means the world to me.
Well,
But yeah, I was
both chemists and photographers go into the lab, right?
Yeah, exactly. He was actually here a couple of weeks ago, and I was doing some emulsion lifting with like Polaroids.
Wow.
And he was like helping me like heat the water and like measure it out. And I was trying to like, I was like, okay, I want this to be a bonding moment with my dad.
That's
It kind of
amazing.
feels like you're in a lab. So yeah, it's true. It's all chemistry.
Well, since we do talk about money on this show a lot, I wondered, for someone who is maybe music adjacent, like a photographer or a designer or something like that, what do you think is a good, for you anyway, what was a good investment to kind of get your career to the next level that you wanted to be at?
Good investment, man. I guess it goes without saying, but just a nice camera. I guess the first couple of years I was doing photography, or the first few years really, I was shooting solely on film, which I think it's a good way for everyone to learn how to take photos. I feel like you should start on film. And, I still obviously shoot on digital all the time, but just kind of like, I guess, building your eye and just kind of learning how to compose without looking on the back of your camera 1,000 times. So I did that for years. And then my first job with Austinist, I shot the show on film and had to get it processed the next day really quick for like a deadline. I was like, I got to get a DSLR. Mm-hmm. And so, I guess, that was my first big investment where I was like, okay, now I can actually turn in photos the same night. And this is like, I just dropped like $2,000 on this camera, but hopefully the money you make from using that camera, it'll pay off over time. I guess, just like camera gear. Definitely a good storage system. I've definitely learned that the hard way a couple of times. Just don't scrape on that. A hard drive, you might find a hard drive for $50, but you're going to lose like so much more than that, if something happens with that. So some solid SSDs, just straight from the beginning. There's so much money that goes into this that I don't even know where to begin, but I feel like those are probably the most important. Just make sure your camera setup is solid and you're like comfortable with it, even though it might be a lot at the beginning. If this is something you really want to do and it's, like you're like driven to do it, it'll pay off. And then, more than anything, it's just like those photos are the most valuable thing you own. So just make sure they're safe.
So it sounds like in the beginning of like when you were in college, you were like absolutely obsessed with photography. Do you think that that obsession with the art form has helped you like find your voice? And when did you realize that you had something original to share?
I don't know if there was ever a point where I was like, oh, I'm doing something special. I think from the beginning, I was always a bit stubborn with like what I covered and how I covered it. And I think, maybe not stubborn is not the right word. I think I just knew what I liked. And I knew that I didn't want to be a wedding photographer. And I wanted to do something in the music world. And like, I was, I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. And then once I discovered photography, I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. Like, because, early on, just like looking at photos of the Strokes when I was like 13 or whatever, I was just like, it was so moving to me. And I was like, I want to do that for people, whether in the grand scheme of things, it's important or not, even if there's like one kid that's just like, this is what inspired me to pick up a camera. It's like, okay, cool. Like maybe I'm doing something right. I think that's kind of when whenever I get feedback from people, because, I think, the artist struggle, I guess, is just the classic imposter syndrome and just being like, I could be doing better. Like, I feel like I always have somewhere I need to go. And to be able to step back sometimes or just get feedback from people, it'd be like, I love what you do or whatever. It's like, okay, like, I just need to appreciate where I am. And, I think naturally I'm just like motivated to keep doing better. So that will always be there. But just balancing that with not being so hard on myself to the point where I can't do anything. And I think that's like the pitfall of like a lot of people in this field. But yeah, I mean, I guess. Sorry, what was your, I just kind of went on a tangent there.
No, that was great. That was perfect.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm curious, as someone who's dabbled in freelance too, how do you value your work?
I think it's a factor of things. I think the biggest thing is just like, while I always have somewhere I can go as far as learning, like I've been doing this for 10 years at full time. So, I'm confident that I know what I'm doing. So there's value in that. And then just, just like valuing yourself as an artist. And I think it's just something you learn over time. The first press shot I ever did, it was for like a semi mid-sized label. I got paid like $100, which like I didn't know what I was doing. I was like 18.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so that's something you learn over time. And sometimes you learn the hard way, and just like learning from other photographers too, who have experienced like, don't do full buyouts, and if you're doing that, make sure you're getting paid a lot. And yeah, it's just like hands-on experience.
You do a lot. You do a lot of different types of work with different types of artists. How do you get your jobs? I mean, because you do a lot of magazine shoots, you do a lot of live tour shoots. It looks like you follow bands on tour. How do you like take jobs, and how do you get jobs?
I mean, it can come in a multitude of ways. Sometimes it's just an Instagram chat with the band that's like, hey, we love your work, come on tour. It's just like a friend who's just like, we're doing this run. Do you want to like come along with us? And then, then we talk to management or whatever. Sometimes it's just management reaching out directly, or a label, or, magazines that I've built relationships with over the years. Sometimes it could be recording studios, but yeah, it comes from all over. And I came into music photography knowing I didn't just want to do live music. I want to cover all aspects of it. So that's what I'm constantly trying to do. Because it teaches me to be a better photographer as well. Like shooting a live set is way different from doing studio work or like portrait work or whatever. So yeah, I like covering all aspects of it.
Starting out, was it more like you reaching out to people to shoot them or shoot at their venue or festival?
Yeah, I think, at the beginning, I think you kind of have to put yourself out there, but people aren't going to know they're not going to read your mind. So yeah, I mean, with Stereogum, it was just like a cold email, and I was just like, hey, like, I'm looking, like, I want to cover ACL. I was wondering if y'all are interested. I was just like, I don't know if they would get back. And then they did. And then from there, I started covering things here and there for them. And yeah, at these festivals, you always get a PR list, and I always loved doing portraits. So that's how I, over the years, just like met so many people. Like, I think that was also a big way I just kind of learned how to do portrait photography, was at these festivals, just being like, okay, we got like 5 minutes in this like disgusting media area that's just like white tarp. How am I going to make this look good? It just kind of teaches you to be on your toes. And yeah, you just meet, everyone from like the artists to like the managers or whoever's with them. And yeah, it was a great way to kind of build my career at the beginning. And the same with like my first tour. It was just kind of like reaching out myself. I try to tell that a lot to like, I have friends now that kind of ask me that same question. I was just like you gotta like take the initiative a lot of times. And I think I definitely learned that early on. Like, even when I was just going to shows and like meeting bands afterwards, like I was super shy. Like I mentioned in my high school, I just kind of was like detached from it, didn't really talk to anyone. But I knew that if I wanted to get this shot of whoever, that like I have to do it. Like, I have to. So it was like a form of like immersion therapy, almost like forcing myself to go and like talk to people. Yeah.
Going up to the front of a stage to take photos when you're a shy person can be painful. I've found.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I almost, not like a fugue state, but you almost just get into like this different zone almost, when like there have been so many shoots where I like finished it and I was just like, what was I even like? Was I okay? Like, was I completely, I don't know, maybe not an out of body experience, but you just kind of, I don't know, just like get in the zone and like get this like confidence that,
mission.
Yeah, I guess.
Should we move on to the headier part of the show?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
I'm super excited to talk to you about the idea of like rock and roll, or music in general, has always been very defined by imagery. Like Jim Morrison, like the famous dorm room picture of him shirtless or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And like, I saw that photo even years before I heard Light My Fire or whatever. And that whenever I hear them on the radio, I always think about that photo. And I wonder, like, what your relationship is as a photographer when you're taking photos of artists. Like, a lot of times, like, people who are looking at this photo that you took won't have this will be their first relationship with that artist. And how does that make you feel about your responsibility to the artist, and about the work you're doing? Because you really have an impact that you could make.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting, it's exciting to think like, sometimes as a music photographer, you're just like, is this even important? Like, is this like, I'm just shooting bands, but then it's bigger than that. When you really step back and think about it, it's just like, you're capturing like a moment in time, like an important, like you're capturing like the music culture at this time, which, as you were saying, like there's photos of Jim Morrison decades ago that like still stick with you. And yeah, to think that like, maybe a photo I post on Instagram might be the first time someone hears about an artist is like exciting. It's exciting to think that could, in some way, even just get like one person to listen to it. And it's, also awesome to think that these bands trust me enough with that to, that like I approach these trying to capture the bands in their like truest form, whether it's like on stage or backstage or wherever, I try not to like really force anything. It's just like when I see what's happening in the environment, I try to like especially with touring and BTS stuff, I try to work with that. But yeah, I just try to remember the photos that like I would look at when I was younger, and just be like, okay, Idols was my favorite band, like what photo of Joe would I be like super excited to see?
Yeah.
And I think I am a fan of them, so that helps as well, just with like how I approach shooting.
Yeah. I mean, even on a very small scale, like I was showing my fiance photos of your work, and one of the ones that jumped out at her was the Faye Webster one, where Faye is like in a gym, I think.
Oh, yeah, the rock climbing.
Yeah, and my fiance was like, who is this? Like, and I was like, it's Faye Webster. She has this awesome album out. And so today she listened to it for the first time, and with that image in her mind. And she was like,
"Oh,
this is
exciting!
So cool." So you're doing the Jim Morrison thing in 2022.
Man, well, it's still crazy to even think that, like it never gets old hearing that kind of stuff, and it's truly what makes me think like, okay, I'm gonna keep doing this, and like, yeah, it like that ultimately is what brings me joy in what I do, and of course, being around music all the time, but just thinking that in some way it might matter to someone in that way.
We have all been around during the rise of Instagram, and I wondered if you thought kind of when that was coming about, this is going to ruin my life. Like the phone camera too, you kind of get into this thought of like, well, anyone can take a photo now, and phone cameras are really good. So anyone can take a picture, but there's something that's, I think, very special about what you do. But for a lot of people, they don't know that the quality of a photo can translate messages much more effectively than just something on your phone, possibly.
Yeah, like there's a big difference between me taking a photo of Faye Webster concert and you doing it.
Yeah, but did you ever
I know, I haven't seen your photos. So.
Trust me, they're bad.
Did you ever struggle with that, though, finding value in your work, even though we're flooded with these other like photos 24/7 on Instagram?
I mean, I think even with starting off on Flickr, like that's kind of how my career started, it was with the internet. So I think I had some sense of that early on. But yeah, now with Instagram, I don't know, in some ways it's a cool thing because people that should be getting discovered for their great work that had no other means to do it are. But, I think ultimately, like, I think from what I observe, there is so much content, like there'll be a show and then there'll be like 200 videos from it. But like, I don't think people are going to remember those videos, I don't think people are going to necessarily listen to Idols and think back on some phone video they saw, but they might remember a photo from that show that, and yeah, that could ultimately come down to the photographer and their skills. And even with phone photography, I think a lot of people got worried about that. But I also, I know photographers with like $5,000 cameras that take worse pictures than some people do on their phone. So, I think people can make a lot of excuses for like, oh, well, everyone with the phone now is a photographer. It's just like, well, no, you still have to be good at it, I think, to like stick out in the long run, and what I hope is that in some ways, maybe it'll like come back around where like people start appreciating originality and like quality as opposed to just like getting something out straight away.
Yeah, I remember the Atlantic magazine did this experiment several years ago where they hired a professional photographer to take a picture of Times Square, and then all these other people took, just random people like me took pictures of Times Square, and they compared it. It wasn't even close. Like whose was better.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I forgot what newspaper it was that like fired their house photographers and just got like some intern or something to cover a baseball game, and they ran their photo on the newspaper. I think it was a newspaper, but then there was like another newspaper that had a professional photographer, and it was just like night and day. It's like that stuff matters,
Yes.
Like just the other day, the other day, like on tour, after the World Cup, there was that photo of Messi with the World Cup on like someone's shoulders, and everybody was just talking about it in the green, like, look at this photo, like, no one's going to talk about like some photo, like some phone pic from like 100 miles away of him, yeah, I think there's still hope out there.
Photography. I mean, sorry. Well, photography can often be seen as this anonymous kind of art form where the focal point is what's in front of the lens, and the person behind the lens, who is the artist, is kind of anonymous, right? So I was wondering, like, how you feel about that, and if there's if you feel like you have any calling cards or ways of identification for your work that you think that are specific to you, like things that make your work yours.
I mean, it wasn't something I ever set out to do intentionally, but I do get like quite a bit of feedback from people that are just saying like, I can like pick your photo out from a set, and that's cool. And I've gone through like a lot of editing transformations over the years. I think every photographer looks at their work 2 years ago and they're just like, what was I thinking? But yeah, I mean, maybe my editing style, I'm not like the most technical photographer, but I try to capture a moment in front of me that excites me. Ultimately, it's without thinking about just like the perfectly lit, like, wire image photo that's just like boring, yeah. So maybe just like my style paired with just like maybe the people I'm covering, and just, I don't know. I know I've like touched on this so many times, but just being as authentic as I can with what I'm sharing to people. I feel like that ultimately resonates with people. But from what I heard, people just say like, oh yeah, I can pick your photo out from like a set. So whether that's the editing style or the way I shot something,
Do you feel like, you like empathetic people make the best photographers because you have to be so aware of emotional moments that are happening all the time?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that's a huge part in this job, especially when you're working so closely with people. You could be the best photographer, but if you're a dick to be around, or you just like can't read a room, people aren't gonna trust you with anything,
I've heard that a lot, that being a good hang, quote unquote, is just as important as being good at what they hired you to do.
Yeah. And like, hopefully you have both, like the perfect mix of both. But yeah, I think, just knowing when it's like not the right time to take a photo, or just like sensing when someone is having a moment on stage and being like, oh, I need to like capture this or whatever. I think, that's a huge part in this. And, people, the people you work with, when you show that side, and you are a good hang, they are gonna trust you, to like open up to you, and they know you're not gonna like, just do some like whack shit or anything.
Is there anything that you would say to aspiring freelancers, whether that's in photography or other industries? Yeah,
I mean, just trust yourself, just like if you have an idea, don't be scared to do it. Don't be like, oh, what are other people going to think? Or is this something that's going to like get a lot of likes or whatever? Just that stuff you need to tune out completely and just focus on what you think is good and what you want to try. And, that's something that people are going to connect with more than anything. And like we touched on earlier, don't be afraid to reach out to people. The worst thing they could do is say no, right? But you'd be surprised how many artists or whoever just don't even think about having a photographer sometimes. And then when you bring it up, they're like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. Like, yeah, join us for a few days or whatever. Just like, don't be afraid to just like go all in on this, and just be a nice person. That's more than, that's in some ways might be more important than anything, especially like starting out.
What are your hopes for your career going forward? I mean, do you want to continue the same kind of work that you're doing, or do you want to expand into film and all that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I hope this is something I do till the day I die, as long as people keep hiring me. I've like dabbled into music video stuff in the last few years, so I want to try to do that a bit more. I mean, just like, the video world in general. Maybe just like, I always want to do music, but it'd be fun to do stuff, maybe in the film world even, and just kind of like explore that. There's a whole massive list of things that I have just like checking through them, just like, okay, I want to learn how to do this week, like lifting Polaroid emulsions, or I want to learn how to like operate a 16mm camera. And so I think as you start learning those things on your own, you like start putting more energy into those. It's like, okay, now I know how to use this 16mm. I'm going to reach out to someone and try to like film something. I think just, there's always something to learn, and it can be overwhelming, but I don't try to think of it that way. It's exciting. And, I think just getting better at, just my photography work as well. There's always 100 different things I see that I'm like, okay, I can do this better, do that. And just maybe just do some more video work and learn that world a little more. I remember a few years ago being on my first, just like directing my first video, and it was my second one maybe, but it was the first time I had just a production team, and just talking to the DP and just like learning all this terminology. And I was just like, I feel like an idiot right now. He was like, no, don't worry. Like all directors are like this. And he was like, no, this is like, you have the creative vision and we're here to help you bring it to life. But, I want to learn that side of it too. Like, I don't want to just like, so like since then, I've learned so much just in the last few years alone about the video world. So I just want to, dive into that a little more as well.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask you about matters of taste, because those seem to be super important. We live in Nashville, and I saw a country star taking pictures on a train track like a couple days ago.
Oh, nice.
And I've seen, Caroline and I have seen like plenty of, people getting pictures in front of red brick walls and a lot of like leather jackets on motorcycles and things like that. How do you make sure that your photos look really cool?
How do you differentiate between cliche and classic?
I think it really depends on the artist as well. Like sometimes artists want to do those kinds of shoots, but then I think there's like, even with a train track, I do definitely try to avoid that at all costs. But I feel like with everything, I feel like there's a way to make it look cool. Like that's almost a fun challenge in itself.
I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Just do a whole series, just all the cliches, right? Red brick wall, train tracks. Yeah. What else? Just like a sports car.
Jumping.
I mean, I think, even now there's some ideas I try out where I'm just like, that was so ridiculous. But I think trying it, sometimes a ridiculous idea can end up like coming out way cooler than you ever imagined. So I think especially when I'm doing like portrait work, I always try to plan, like 4 or 5 different ideas. There's always the one where it's just like, okay, let's just do some classic studio stuff. And then let's just go do some location stuff. And then maybe 1 or 2 are just like kind of weird and out there. And if the artist is down for it, we'll try it out. I think it's just like trial and error. And, taste is, I don't know if taste is something you can like teach someone.
One of the cool things about your work to me from an outsider is there's like this intimacy of almost like a family member, where like Angel Olsen on the rowboat, or like Faye Webster in the gym. There's like you're capturing these moments that feel like it would be like someone's mom taking it in a lot of ways, or like, but you're making the artist feel like closer than they otherwise would. Does that make sense?
Because they're open to you, they're open to us, the viewer, in a way.
That's what
well, thank you.
Yeah.
And like both of those shoots, it was very go with the flow. Like that Angel shoot was the first shoot I did, I guess, post COVID, it was, like the July 2020. So it was like very socially distant, very just like being super careful. So we just, I went to Asheville, and she just kind of said like, I know this spot, like I try to talk to them first and see like, what they're comfortable with. And she was like, yeah, I know about like the secret lake. And so I feel like she was comfortable as well. And also we had this relationship that we built up over the years. And so, I try to show that, I guess, in the photos.
It really comes across. I mean, even the one that you did of the Tame Impala dude, what is that guy's name? Kevin? Yeah. It's like there's a closeness that is like so, there's something magic about it, about like, a comfort that comes across where there's so much of rock photographs are like posing, and that's always so lame. Like if you can capture someone in their natural element when they're just themselves, I always feel like the best stuff, and you really do that. So.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I try to capture what I would want to see in the artist. So yeah, hopefully that shows. Or I try to capture the side of them that, as an Angel Olsen fan or a Tame Impala fan, like it would make me excited to see just them hanging out, or just, them on a boat, just like chilling, or, it's just like, I don't know, it just kind of like lifts this veil in a way where, even with Instagram and all that, like it just hits kind of different, I think.
Well, to circle all the way back around and kind of talk a little, just touch on the financial thing again. Is being a music photographer lucrative?
Does it pay the bills?
Yeah.
I mean, it does now, but it was a lot of hard work to get here. And, I'm definitely grateful. Like, I'm so grateful. And like, I think it's a mix of hard work and probably luck along the way that got me to this point. But there's no like math to getting to this point. There's no like exact steps you have to follow. Like I'm not by any means like rich or anything, like definitely not, but I'm able to like pay my rent and like feed myself and everything.
Right. Yeah.
But even with that, there's still, even when I'm at this point where I'm like, okay, I'm like regularly getting work and things are going well, it's just, you don't know. Like you're still like freelance, like with, you're just like, maybe there'll be a month where there's no work at all. And so, there's always going to be that sense of just like unpredictability, but it feels less and less so as you build your career and things go well. But like it's hard. It's hard to get to a point where it is, but it's possible. Even in this day and age, like people need music photographers. I think everyone after COVID was just like, are we just done? Like, is anyone going to need us anymore? And like all of my homies, like my close homies that are music photographers this year, they're just like, we are so tired. There's like so much work. So yeah, I mean, I think it can be. Yeah.
Are you able to be more selective about the types of jobs you take now that you're more established?
Yeah, definitely. Which is like also another thing I'm like really grateful for it. I think from the beginning, I always tried to be like, okay, this is kind of, at least with like the things I'm sharing and putting out in the world. Like, again, occasionally there's like a holiday party, or like I shot one wedding and I was like, I'm never doing this again. There's like other things that I kind of do here and there, but like for what I care about, I always like was very aware of like what I was covering. And now like, luckily I'm to a point where I'm just like, no, like this is what I'm excited about and this is what I want to do. And like, a lot of times like there just isn't time to do everything either. So that in some ways it's like, okay, well I want to do this job more, so I'm going to do that. Like I think I'm just more picky with things I just know just completely don't align with what I am into or care about, or it's just like I'm never going to go shoot a fucking Trump rally or, like things like that. Yeah.
Well, hopefully no one will anymore.
Yeah. That would be cool.
Right.
Well, I feel good about that. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Yeah, it was been such a pleasure to talk to you, for real.
Oh, well, likewise. Yeah, hopefully there's something usable in there.
Oh, definitely. Your vibe and just how you have let opportunities guide your path and been kind of free flow with it, and it's led to something positive. That's very comforting and inspiring. So thanks
very
for that.
inspiring. And your work is just absolutely beautiful. So thank you.
Oh, well, yeah, thank you again. And yeah, hopefully we'll cross paths at some point too.
Thanks for listening to Devalued. For more information about our podcast, please visit devalued.show.